Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we're going to focus on the fallout from India's Republic Day, the 26th of January, otherwise known as Black Day in the Sikh community. In that context, we're going to discuss the ongoing judicial betrayal of the 1984 genocide victims with the recent acquittal of the politician already previously found guilty of genocide atrocities. And we'll contrast that with the several Bandhi Singhs still in prison despite having already served their sentence, which have provoked the protests which still continue at the Shambu border crossing to this day. All this and more on today's show, and of course at the end of the show we'll take a look at loads of great comments as always, so do stay tuned for that, and thank you for all your contributions. Right, let's get underway, and yes indeed, the judicial shield, as we call it, it did appear just a few days ago that this character, and you can see a big smile across his face, as well he may well smile, Sajjan Kumar, he was acquitted on January the 22nd in a Delhi court. He's a former Congress MP, and he, in 1984, the anti-Sikh genocide case involved murders in the Janakpuri and the Vicaspuri areas, and he's been found guilty in the past, and he has actually been in prison for these very crimes, and yet despite the weight of evidence it looks like he's been acquitted again. So I want to look at just the fallout and the response and really the implications of this, because I think much of it is pretty obvious, but a lot of it does require recounting and reminding just what is going on here. Now, part of the response, actually, surprisingly, came from the Shiromani Akali Dal, the president, Sukhbir Singh Badal, is a name we often talk about. But even he expressed shock, stating that the verdict reopened deep wounds and condemned the deliberate failure of investigating agencies. So even he stood up and said, look, this is blatantly obvious just what's going on here. It does imply, of course, a lot of state complicity. And again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to work out just what's going on here. It highlights a 42-year pattern of the Indian state protecting its own people, its own assets, while of course suppressing evidence of the genocide itself. Unsurprisingly, outlets like the Times of India, all these, the mainstream, the Gaudiya media, frame this as a neutral legal outcome. They focused on what they said was a lack of evidence, rather than the state-sponsored destruction of that evidence. I'm just going to play in the background, so let me just play you as I talk to you. This is just one of countless Gaudiya media outlets as they report it. Of course, they're all excited about it. It's breaking news, it's big news. But ultimately, they're trying to reframe this as it's a legal outcome. It was lack of evidence. There was there could not have been a guilty verdict here. In reality, they're hiding the truth that we all know. It is a state complicit in this. And this failure, this judicial failure, reinforces this base presumption on behalf of the Sikh community that Sikhs can never find justice within this framework of Indian law. The judiciary itself serves the interests of the Hindutva states over the rights of the oppressed people like the Sikh community. In other words, it stands as an asset, effectively, of the Brahmanical elite. And notice, of course, in this report, for example, it doesn't refer to the genocide. It will not use the word genocide. It keeps referring to the word riot. So it's taken 42 years, and that's how long the families of Janakpuri and Vicaspuri have waited for the Indian state to acknowledge the blood on its hands through people like Kumar. And this week, the response they've received from a Delhi court was cold, it was calculated, it was an acquittal of the very man clearly behind and orchestrating many of these murders. So let's be clear about what we're seeing here. This isn't a failure of the law itself. The law is actually working exactly as intended by the Brahmanical elite to shield the perpetrators of the Sikh genocide. While Indian mainstream media, the Gaudiya media, the lapdogs of this Indian state, report this with supposedly clinical detachment, they're focusing on the prosecution failures. We all know the truth. The failure was the state's refusal to protect witnesses and preserve evidence for 4 decades. This is, you can call it almost the Khalsa Vox protocol in action. This is propaganda in its purest form. They want you to believe that the system is fair, that due process was followed. But there is no due process for a community the state has clearly marked for erasure, elimination, burial. This acquittal is a very loud and clear message. The lives of Sikhs are expendable in India. And even as Sukhbir Singh Badal himself, actually for once rightly pointing out, while the state blocks the release of Bandhi Singhs, who've served their time much longer than their time, it opens the door for the monsters of 1984. And this is why the clarion cry for Khalistan is so loud now. This is why it's gaining so much momentum for Sikh sovereignty. This is why Khalistan isn't just a choice, it's a necessity. A people can't live in a house where the judges are the cousins of the killers, where they're all in it for themselves, they're all looking after each other. Now, we're not asking for justice from Delhi anymore, we're just simply demanding the right to Sikhs' own destiny, where shaheeds, martyrs are honoured, and enemies are actually genuinely held to account. The wounds from 1984 are deep. They hurt. They still resonate today. They're still open. The evidence is the Sikh community's collective memory. They don't forget this. They know the truth. They were there. They suffered. And the resolve for a sovereign Khalistan is stronger than ever. And it is stronger than these corrupt courts, these courts that are acting on behalf of the Brahmanical elite. It's a terrible, terrible day for so-called Indian justice. But all it's doing, it is just drumming up further support for Khalistan. This is a war that they cannot win now. They are fighting it in completely the wrong way. So there you go. Let's move on now. And yes, of course, yesterday was the 26th of January. It was Republic Day. This is a day, of course, celebrated across India, but certainly not so much in Punjab. And of course, the Gaiety media are absolutely packed full of all the Republic Day celebrations. What it wasn't full of course, was what the Sikh people thought about it. And of course, Sikh people refer to it often as Black Day for very obvious reasons. Here you can see pictures. These are pictures from the Acquittal from yesterday. So protests were held, actually, interestingly, right across the world, not just in Amritsar here. The protests held yesterday represented, of course, this long-standing tradition of marking India's Republic Day as a Black Day. Even in Washington and in London, in Toronto, thousands of Sikhs gathered at Indian high commissions to reject the legitimacy of the Indian state. And this, of course, it's not just a simple symbolic gesture. It's a global declaration right across the world, across the diaspora, that the Sikh nation remains, in their view, an occupied people. They see the Punjab as an occupied territory. Of course, that contradicts everything that India and Delhi and Narendra Modi and the BJP try to, this propaganda that they throw out on a daily basis. We are a united nation. Watch my podcast on Friday where we come up with the phrase unity through diversity. India is not unity through diversity. And this is what Black Day is trying to highlight, the fact that it is basically, they're saying Punjab is actually an occupied territory. Protesters, of course, highlighted that while India displays its military prowess in Delhi, its might and its force in Delhi, at the same time, it's suppressing the fundamental rights of self-determination in Punjab, these basic democratic rights that they will not recognise, they certainly will not acknowledge in the Punjab. And the presence of the Nishan Sahib and Khalistan flags at these protests, and do note, of course, even in Amritsar at the Acquittal, there are Khalistan flags, and this is why India is so afraid now, and this is why the Khalistan movement is gaining ground, is because people are now losing that fear to speak out. People are now actually going out in public holding the Khalistan flag. And it's a visual reminder to all who see this, including, of course, the Delhi government, that Sikh sovereignty and, of course, their rejection of the 1950 constitution, which Sikhs, of course, as I keep saying, never formally signed, it's reminding them this is what we stand for, and we're not going away, and we will never go away. And this is the point that Delhi, really, and the RSS and Hindutva just don't seem to understand. It's never going to go away. You cannot kill an ideology. History has always proven this. You cannot kill an ideology. You can throw 1 million troops at it. You can throw every law on the planet at it. You cannot kill an ideology. It's a simple fact. Ideologies have overthrown regimes. It may have taken decades in the past to do it, but ideologies, on the whole, tend to win through, at least in some respect, in the end. Now, the diaspora's role in this is pretty critical here. It's pretty important. It's basically acting as the voice of the voiceless. For those in Punjab who, of course, face immediate arrest for if they came out with the same sorts of things, despite the fact that actually people are growing a voice in Punjab. We've seen it in the Lok Sabha elections last year, where they were given a voice, and of course, pro-Khalistan candidates were elected. So the voice, these voiceless in Punjab, are actually slowly but surely finding their voice, fortunately. And I think, again, this is why Delhi is so terrified. And of course, the diaspora, it can be a lot more vocal about this, can be a lot more visible about this. And this global coordination proves the fact, as I keep saying, the Khalistan movement isn't fading away. It's not a fringe. It's gathering momentum. It's a mainstream movement. It really is. It's a sophisticated, international political force that remains the primary challenge to India's narrative of this internal unity, this unity through diversity. I want to show you also, I'll show you a video. This is Republic Day. This is one of the protests, just to give you this is a wee one. I think this is in Washington. Well done to these guys. Let's get up a bit of volume so you can hear the guys shouting.
India out! India out! India out! India out!
Now, well done to those guys. And of course, those protests were mirrored right around the world, right across the diaspora. And they continued. Obviously highlighting many things to the cameras that were watching. Of course, the state repression by India is a clear tool that they're using to try and highlight to the wider public around the world that India is repressing the Sikh people. India is denying simple, basic democracy that we take for granted here. And they also, I mean, in a lot of the social media, the press refer to things like, of course, the FIR by the Delhi police special cell against people like Gurpreet Singh Pannin and Sikhs for Justice. And they often refer to what's called this 26-26 call. And you see this a lot in the Gaudiya media, whereby, sorry, I'll just try and keep this video on a loop just whilst I'm talking. They talk about this 26-26 call, which is a textbook example of lawfare. I often use the term lawfare. It's the use of the legal system to delegitimise political movements. And the Indian state is consistently using, for example, acts like the UAPA, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, as part of this lawfare, and other sedition laws to criminalise the simple act of raising a flag or calling for a peaceful referendum. And by framing Pannoon's call for civil disobedience as a terrorist plot, of course they're always using this word terrorist, the state is trying to justify its heavy-handed surveillance and preemptive detention of Sikh activists right across India. Amritpal Singh, Jagtar Singh Johal, amongst all their colleagues, and many, many colleagues. And this whole sort of idea is designed to create a chilling effect. They're trying to inject fear. They're making the average Sikh citizen in Punjab fear that any expression of Panthic pride could be labelled as anti-national activity or terrorist, God forbid, but they label it as terrorist activity. So let's highlight that while the state offers rewards for its own informants. It treats the offer of rewards for raising the Khalistan flag, a symbol of freedom, as an act of war. And this disparity reveals the state's deep-seated insecurity and its reliance on police-state tactics to maintain control over a population that increasingly identifies with a call for sovereignty. This is, the key word there is insecurity. The Indian state is increasingly insecure. It realises it's fighting a war that it cannot win. And the more insecure it feels, the tighter those controls come in. It's terrified, basically. And of course, the Indian Gaudiya media, they're all spinning this in the way that is entirely predictable. Most of the outlets, well, all of the outlets really, frame these legitimate political protests as terrorist plots involving Pakistan-backed gangsters, using this, once again, the 26-26 code, named to manufacture fear. In other words, it's same old, same old. It's the Godi media doing what it does best. It represents the Indian government labelling legitimate, democratic, peaceful protests as terrorists. They're all fringe gangsters. They're backed by Pakistan. How often have we heard that nonsense trotted out? And the mainstream media in India has spent the last 48 hours after these reporting these protests as terrorist fringe elements. And they're basically acting as an extension of the Ministry of Home Affairs. They might as well just put a label of we're speaking on behalf of the Ministry of Home Affairs. They've aggressively pushed this 2626 code, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But basically, what the 2626 code, it's a branding exercise. It's trying to equate the Sikh struggle for sovereignty with the 26th of November Mumbai attacks. That was a terrorist attack. So they are deliberately, again, it's all this subliminal manipulation of the Indian public by calling it 2626. They're trying to ally legitimate, democratic, peaceful protests for Khalistan with the terrorist attacks of Mumbai on 26th of November. It's wicked, it's evil, really. And it's a deliberate psychological operation. It's trying to manufacture public consent for further state violence. In other words, you must back us to further clamp down on the Sikh population. The media's script in this consistently links political activism, genuine, peaceful, democratic activism, to Pakistan-backed gangsters. And this is a narrative that they've tried over and over again to strip the Khalistan movement of its political and moral legitimacy by ignoring the grassroots support for sovereignty, which is massive, and instead focusing on interrogations and intelligence leaks. The mainstream Godi media ensures that the Indian public never sees the Sikh perspective. They don't see the truth unless they manage to watch a channel like ours. And we need to pick apart all these stories every time just to show how they rely on unnamed sources and sleeper cell myths to distract from the reality of Indian democratic failure. The Godi media doesn't report the news. It manufactures a threat to justify the state's ongoing attacks and disillusion of Punjab, to try and dissolve the culture and heritage of Punjab. And of course, the continued incarceration of Sikh political prisoners, of which there are many. And this whole myth of unity through diversity, and this whole paranoia about the sleeper cell of Pakistan-backed terrorists. The Indian State's Republic Day parade is an exercise in this sanitised unity, in this fake unity. And that stands in direct contrast to the reality of what's going on the ground. The barricades, the water cannons, the countless troops in Kashmir, the troops and the police enforcement across Punjab, deployed against its own citizens in this so-called united nation. The unity narrative is built on basically the erasure, the elimination, the destruction of minorities, of minority identities, minority cultures, particularly through, again, and I'll use this term again, this Khalsa Vox protocol. Often there's a website called Khalsa Vox, which I often dip into, as you know, regular viewers know, which churns out propaganda. It always attempts to frame pro-sovereignty Sikhs as a misguided fringe, a bunch of terrorists, a bunch of terrorists backed by Pakistan intelligence or whatever. And it's separate from the patriotic mainstream. In reality, the Indian state's own actions, the mass deployment of forces, whether it's the police or army in Kashmir or in Punjab, and this frantic anti-terror sweeps that they do in Delhi, betray the simple fact that they view the entire Sikh community with suspicion. In fact, I'd use a stronger word than that. The state-sponsored narrative of sleeper cells and Pakistan-backed fringe terrorists, it's used to create a permanent state of emergency. We only need to look back in recent history, the Declaration of Emergency by Indira Gandhi, for example, where constitutional basic human rights are suspended for Sikhs under the guise of national security. And again, likewise, it's mirrored right across in the north in Kashmir, J&K, exactly the same tactics. And this Indian state paranoia is the inevitable result of a state that refuses to address the political root causes of Sikh dissent. Instead, choosing a policy of force, brute force, violence, containment, criminalisation, labelling these people as terrorists. And for the Panth, the choice is clear. It's between submit to this unity through diversity, which basically implies destruction, erasure of your very own heritage, or continue this struggle, this fight, this battle for sovereignty. That is a simple fight to respect distinct national character, basically to fight for the existence of the Sikh people and their heritage, their culture. And it always comes back to Article 25 of the Constitution. In fact, the Constitution has often been described as a death warrant. The core of the Black Day protest is the fundamental rejection of the Indian Constitution, and specifically this Article 25, which legally classified Sikhs as Hindus for the purposes of Indian law. For the Sikh Panth, this isn't a minor legal detail, it's a constitutional death warrant for basic, distinct religious and national identity. Republic Day, yesterday, back in 1950, marked the day this erasure was legalised, which is why the call for Khalistan is inherently, it's a call for a new sovereign legal framework. We need our own law, our own constitution. The Indian state's refusal to amend this Article 25, despite decades of protest, fighting against it, proves that the Brahmanical elite sees the Sikh people, its identity, as something to be absorbed, neutralised, destroyed within this Hindutva fold. Sovereignty is the only solution to this existential threat, as I say, on a daily basis. Until we have a sovereign Khalistan, until Khalistan is established, Sikhs will forever remain, legally speaking, Hindus in the eyes of the Indian state, deprived, denied the right to manage their own affairs through their own institutions. This constitutional betrayal, all the way back to 1950, is basically, it's the foundation of the Khalistan movement, amongst many other bits that you can class as a foundation. But it is one of the key reasons why no Sikh can truly celebrate this Republic Day until the Sikh people are free through Khalistan. I'll show you now a video of the Acquittal. This was yesterday outside the Acquittal. Look at this. If you want to feel a nice warm fuzzy feeling, look at the Khalistan flags. This is how significant the Khalistan movement is becoming. This is how the fear is falling away now. People are waking up right across Punjab. People are realising what's going on. People are decreasingly afraid. People's fear is dissolving. They're realising the movement, the Khalistan movement, is gaining momentum. It is growing in support, in power. Look at those wonderful Khalistan flags outside the Acquittal. That's how visible it's becoming. That's how powerful. This is not a fringe. This is mainstream now. This is mainstream in the Punjab, despite everything that the Gaudiya media tried to persuade the Indian people otherwise. The Indian state yesterday put on its annual display of military hardware and this force, this enforced nationalism. But while the tanks rolled through Rajpath, the world, all of us, saw a very different reality. Whether right across the diaspora, from Washington to London, doesn't matter where you are, the Khalsa Panth marked yesterday for what it truly is. It is a black day. In Washington, as you saw in that video, Sikhs stood before the Indian embassy, as they did right across other high commissions in London, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Their voices echoed with this single call for Khalistan. They're reminding the world that for Sikhs, the Indian Republic, it's not a democracy. It's, in their view, it's an occupying force. And we look at all the Gaudiya media, how they responded, and the state-aligned press. They spent the last 48 hours screaming about terrorist plots and Pakistani links. They've even invented this Hollywood-style code name for it, 2626. It's classic psychological warfare. It's classic propaganda in its purest authoritarian form. It's Orwellian. By linking the legitimate call for sovereignty to gangsters and foreign interference, they're attempting to delegitimise the heartbeat of a nation seeking simply its freedom. India fears this wonderful flag of Khalistan. They fear the Nishan Sahib. The Delhi police's FIRs against people like Gurpratap Singh Pannu, they're not signs of strength. They are signs of this insecurity I referred to earlier. They're signs of a state that knows its unity is a fragile thing. It's a mask. It's something that was originally just forced on India by the British state, and the Brahmanical elite inherited it, and they're just still trying to enforce it just through sheer brute force. It's not a natural evolution. They claim pro-Khalistan posters were found in Rahini and Dabri, yet their own officers admit actually they found nothing. It's a theatre. The whole thing is nonsense. It's propaganda designed to justify more repression. And for the Sikh people, the choice is clear. We don't celebrate the constitution that erases Sikh identity and labels you guys out there who are Sikhs as Hindus. Sikhs are celebrating, as they always have done, this spirit of resistance that refuses to be broken. It's never going to go away. As I said earlier, this is never going to go away. Every flag raised yesterday, whether it's in London, whether it's in Washington, whether it's outside the Acquittal, every slogan shouted for Khalistan, Khalistan Zindabad, is a brick in this foundation of a future sovereign state. So the message to Delhi is really clear. You can have your parades, but the Sikh people have the truth, and they have Khalistan, and Khalistan is coming whether they like it or not. So, talking about repression and the Indian state, let's move on to the Shambu border crossing. So what's going on here? I'll start off with, again, I'll play in the background here. This is another video. This is the Cody Media again, reporting what's going on at the Shambu border crossing. This protest has been going on for a long time. This is a trans-border mobilisation for justice is basically how it's labelled. The current standoff at the Shambu border is the culmination of years of sustained resistance by the Sikh people. Most notably, specifically, it's the Qaumi Insaf Morcha. And it's occupied Mohali, this area in Mohali, since January 2023. So this is 3 years this has been going on. This mobilisation has expanded into a massive blockade at this Punjab-Haryana border. It's involved thousands of tractors and permanent shelters. You can see here in the pictures here. This is the JCBs, and I won't play the sound because it's nonsense, but it's basic propaganda. But this is the Gaudiya media saying, this is a law and order breakdown. It's a law and order crisis. It's not. This is a simple protest. Again, it's a democratic process. And again, this Gaudiya media is highlighting how they're reframing the narrative, saying it's just a breakdown in law and order. They're not actually looking at why all these Sikhs are here and have been here for 3 years on this border. And this mobilisation, this protest, is expanded into a massive blockade at the border. And as I say, it involves thousands of tractors and these that you can see from the pictures, these sort of permanent shelters. And the protesters are there for one simple reason. They're demanding the immediate release of the Bandhi Singhs, Sikh political prisoners like Bhai Balwant Singh Rajana, Bhai Jagtar Singh Hawara, Bhai Devinder Pal Singh Bulla, amongst many others, who remain in Indian prisons despite having served double or even triple their life sentences. They are way beyond their original sentences, yet they are still incarcerated. It is an absolute affront to the rule of law. Anyway, this protest at the border, it's not just localised protests, it's a national Sikh mandate that challenges the very legitimacy of the Indian state's penal system. It's trying to send a message that the law is being used as a political weapon against us as a people. And this Shambu border protest, it's become very symbolic. It symbolises the front line of what's going on here. It's the front line between basically the Khalsa Panth, who are demanding sovereignty. And on the other side of this protest is the cold concrete barricades of the Delhi regime. And it emphasises these prisoners, and this morcha as it's called, emphasises that these prisoners they're not criminals. They're essentially they're prisoners of war. They are political prisoners in a conflict that the Indian state refuses to resolve. It is, in other words, this isn't criminal, this is political. There's a key difference there. And their continued detention is a form of, it's basically collective punishment. It's sending a message out to the Sikh people. It's sending a Sikh nation, it's not going to happen. It's sending a message that the refusal to submit to Brahmanical power means we will keep oppressing you. This is the unity through diversity. And it's all about double standards. There are two sets of laws in one republic. It's this sort of two-tier justice that we often talk about here in the UK. A core pillar of the narrative is the blatant and insulting double standard that exists in the Indian judiciary. My first story about Kumar, prime example of this. In the last 48 hours, the Panth, unsurprisingly, has reacted with a lot of anger to this, of course, what happened of the acquittal of Sajjan Kumar. And contrast that with what's going on with the Bandhi Singhs. The fact that they remain in prison long after their original sentences have passed. And yet, you're freeing people like Kumar, who's blatantly guilty of mass murder in a genocide, and yet you'll release him early, or you'll acquit him on similar charges, and yet the Bandhi Singhs remain incarcerated, essentially forevermore. And the Indian state claims, lack of evidence, to free Kumar, whose role in the genocide is basically indisputable. It's etched in the very blood of those who died in 1984. It uses national security as a permanent excuse to deny parole to the Bandhi Singhs who've completed their legal terms. Similar, people like Amritpal Singh. And the repeated granting of parole to figures like the Dera Sirsa head, often timed with elections, surprise, surprise, it always suits an election time, proves that this Indian rule of law that they call it, it's a flexible thing. They can use it for political purposes. Basically, they have politically weaponised the law in India. And the Sikh people are pretty clear about this. India operates under a two-tier system. One that offers absolute leniency for Hindutva-aligned criminals and state assets, and another tier of eternal persecution for Sikhs. And this two-tier justice is the primary evidence that the Indian constitution is basically, it's a fraudulent document that provides no protection for Sikh rights. And if we pick apart this so-called justice, it reveals it to be a weapon of state repression designed to keep the Sikh leadership in chains while the perpetrators of a genocide walk free and still occupy positions of power. And the Indian government's response to this morcha, this Shambhu March, has been one of military-style containment rather than, for example, here in the West, it would be democratic engagement, talking to them. It doesn't do that. It just uses brute force. And in the last 48 hours, the state has reinforced multi-layered barricades, using cement jersey barriers, iron nails, shipping containers to block the highway. This isn't crowd control. They're fortifying. The fortifications, essentially, of an occupying force. The state has also deployed water cannons and tear gas drones, treating peaceful protesters, including elders and women, as enemy combatants. We saw it in the farmers' protest. We saw the drones dropping tear gas. It was literally like a war zone. And in these protests, there are peaceful democratic protesters. We take for granted here in the West that we can protest. We don't expect to be, to face things like tear gas and drones and this basically this line of soldiers threatening, as they do here. And all we need to do is just highlight this history of broken promises, broken assurances that led to this moment. In 2019, the Modi regime issued a notification for the release of 8 Sikh prisoners to mark Guru Nanak Dev Ji's 550th Gurpurb. 7 years later, the implementation remained stalled. It didn't happen by bureaucratic reviews and MHA interference. And you only need to look at the case of Jagtal Singh Johal to see how that works. Even recent meetings with the Home Ministry officials at the border have resulted in nothing more than empty promises to forward memorandums. Bureaucracy. Deliberate bureaucracy to slow the process. And this cycle of deception, it's a deliberate act, it's a deliberate tactic to try and grind down the Sikh feeling, the Sikh power, the Sikh Panth. They're trying to win this just through almost a war of attrition. And the propaganda narrative will attempt to frame these barricades as necessary for public order. But the reality is, they're a physical manifestation of Delhi's fear of a united Sikh voice demanding its sovereign rights. And a big development in the last 48 hours is the total convergence of the farmers' unions, the SKM Non-Political and Kisan Mazdor Morcha, with the Qawmi Insaf Morcha. Now, this unity, this affiliation, this partnership, has effectively merged the struggle for economic survival through the MSP with the struggle for political dignity, the Bandhi Singhs. Now, leaders like Sawar Singh Panda and Jagjit Singh Dhaliwal have explicitly stated that the release of Sikh prisoners is a fundamental human rights issue that transcends even agricultural demands. Now, joining together, this synergy is actually terrifying for the Indian state because it's now joining forces. It bridges this gap between the farmers, what they see as the rural peasantry, and the ideological core that is the Khalistan movement. In other words, they fear this unification. They're all joining forces. The state-aligned media, the Godi media, is desperately trying to drive a wedge between these two groups by labelling the Bandhi Singhs as a sectarian group, radical, a bunch of radicals. But the massive turnout at the Shambu border proves that the Panth is, whether they like it or not, it's united. The narrative shifted from Sikh prisoners to Punjabi prisoners, framing their detention as an affront to the honour of all who live in the land of the five rivers. This unified front demonstrates that the call for sovereignty is once again, it's not a fringe element, it's not a fringe movement, but it is clearly, and as these protests just grow and partnerships start uniting and people start uniting more and more across the Punjab, pro-Khalistan, it's proving that this movement is deeply embedded in the very fabric of Punjab. It's there, in other words, you can't remove it. It's becoming an unstoppable force against the Hindutva state. And as we speak, just to wrap this up, the Shambu border is once again a site of resistance. Now thousands upon thousands of Sikhs, supported by the Samyukt Kisan Morcha, are standing firm against these barricades of the Indian state. Their demand is simple. It's just, and it's long overdue. Just release the Bandhi Singhs. It is an absolute judicial outrage. And think about the irony of this week. Sajan Kumar, a man whose name is synonymous with the genocide of 1984, walks free. Yet these Singhs, these lions, men like Bhai Balwant Singh Rajwana, Bhai Devinder Pal Singh Bulla, remain in chains. Many of these men have served their sentences twice over. And the Indian state talks about the rule of law while they use water cannons against elders, just simply asking for justice. This is the selective justice of the Hindutva regime. If you're a state-aligned killer, you walk free. If you're a Sikh standing up for your rights, you get a life sentence that never ends. Even Sikh leaders within the BJP are now forced to make statements about the legal complexities of these cases. But there's no complexity here. It's very simple. There's only a lack of political will. The state keeps these prisoners as trophies of their victory over the Sikh Panth. But they're wrong. These men aren't trophies. All they are is basically more fuel for the fire of the struggle, the fight back. The standoff here at Shambu, it's a simple example of a bigger fight. It's a fight against a state that views Sikhs' existence as a threat. The road to Khalistan is paved with what's going on here. This resilience at Shambu, this fight back at Shambu. Now, we won't lift the morcha, we won't not lower the voices, and we will not rest, all of us, even here on Perspectives, until every single Bandhi Singh is brought home. The Khalsa, clearly, is going to prevail. It's never going to go away. The walls of Delhi's prisons will eventually crumble before the truth of our sovereignty, to wrap that up. So, there you go. Those are the three stories of the day. But as you can see, there's two-tier justice and what's going on right across India as we speak. And Republic Day really symbolise, essentially, everything that is going very deeply wrong with India, which is why Khalistan is an inevitability. Okay, on that note, let us move on to our comments section. Thank you to all of you who have contributed massively to the comments section. As always, loads. I said yesterday, some really lovely comments. I've been actually quite overwhelmed once again. sorry, I'm just having a few technical issues. I can't multitask as regular viewers know. The comments that came in, loads of lovely comments, and I have to apologise. Here we go. Right, so once again, the technology, it's a black art, isn't it? Talking about Black Day, it's a black art technology. That's why I miss James, he was very good at things like this. Satnam Khalsa, thank you, Satnam Khalsa, for your comment. The Sarvat Khalsa, let's talk about the Sarvat Khalsa. We had the 40th anniversary of the 1986 Sarvat Khalsa, that's a significant one. It should be an annual event to reflect and renew the messages given. And then, as you said, one is planned for today at the Acquittal. Thank you for highlighting that. Yes, indeed. Of course, as I showed you I showed you the video of the very thing, and a nice warm fuzzy feeling to see the Khalistan flags, numerous there at the Acquittal. Interesting idea though. Should it be an annual event? It's a great idea in theory. In reality, it's a huge logistical exercise. You've got to bring together a lot of disparate organisations across the Sikh community. But it is a good idea in theory because, it means every year all the policies of the Panth can be discussed, reviewed, and maybe even renewed, etc. But as I say, logistically, it's quite a big challenge to bring it together. And then, I think my opinion on this, and Sarvat Khalsas are very rare events, and I think that rarity of it lends it more power. Lends what happens at each Sarvat Khalsa more weight, because of course we talk about the one in 1986, which was so deeply significant. I think that lends it more power. It's significant because it is so rare. It's significant because so many key important things were discussed. Now every year you can't come up with huge goals. It sort of loses its power in its in the number. If you start having too many, people start tuning out basically. So I don't know. It's an interesting idea. Arguments pro and for, but let me know your thoughts. Wabosa, thank you, Wabosa, for your lovely comment. As you say, standing with justice does not come unless you're blessed and chosen by the Almighty. Well, we talked about this. Have I rather presumptuously said, well, I haven't claimed I've been chosen by the Almighty, but it has been said by a few people. Thank you. Anyway, it's a wonderful thought. But as you say, this is nice. Your anchor ship is a prime example, and this is actually why I brought out this comment. It's a prime example of what the multicultural voices the world will get from the new nation of Khalistan. Many thanks. So really the point I wanted to raise out of this comment, thank you, Wabosa, for your comment, is really it just highlights the fact I'm a white guy. Why on earth would a white guy be batting for Khalistan? Simply because I align with it. And this is the whole key point of what Khalistan represents. As I said earlier in the show, Khalistan, as the Indian state, tries to claim it's not a theocracy, it's not a Sikh theocracy, it's not a bunch of terrorists, it's not a fringe element. It's designed based on the original Sikh empire, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's original empire back in the 19th century, which wasn't a purely Sikh demographic. In fact, I may be wrong, but I think even Sikhs might have even been in the minority in the original Sikh empire. It just happened to be ruled by the Panj Pyari sort of governance model. But ultimately, this is what Khalistan will be. It will be open to all ethnicities, to all religious people of all religious persuasions. Everybody will be welcomed. Everybody will be treated equal. And this is the beauty. And this is why, again, I am involved in this, because the whole concept of Khalistan isn't just a Sikh concept. It is a concept that aligns with Western democracies. It aligns with values that I believe in and stand for and will always fight for. Likewise, Americans who are watching this, of course, America's values, whether it's North America or Canada, the whole of North American continent, whether you're down under, in Europe, whatever, if you live in a democratic nation, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what your colour of your skin is, we're all aligned with the same basic human principles, the rule of law, freedom of expression, freedom to practice your religion without fear. That is what Khalistan's all about. And that's why I'm involved, to try and spread this message that Khalistan, it's not just a Sikh thing, it's a global thing. It is something that will stand to represent us all who believe in basic democratic freedoms. So thank you, Wabosa, for that comment. Narinjit Singh Saini. This is a nice comment. Your children in Australia find it very hard to understand the programmes in Punjabi, but really love and understand in English. Well, I hope I'm speaking clearly enough. Since they've started listening to your presentations, they've gained the knowledge and have interest in Sikh history, which I could not inculcate in them. There's a beautiful word, that inculcate. Inculcate, I can't even say it. Many, many thanks to you. Well, thank you, Narinder, for your lovely comment. And a big shout out to your children if you are indeed watching. G'day, guys. And it's lovely that you do see this, and it does actually, as you rightly point out, is a really important point, which I'd always try and stress here. It is so important that the young generation, that we teach our children why we're so passionate about things, what happened, what has happened, not just even in our recent past, but in the early 20th century, even back to the days of the Sikh Empire. It's so important that young Sikh children understand the deeply wonderful, rich heritage that they have a responsibility themselves to promote, to live by, and to carry forward to their children and their grandchildren. It's all about continuity. It's ensuring that the culture, the heritage of the Sikh people is passed down successfully through the generations, because that is the only way it will survive and thrive, and more importantly, bring about Khalistan. So yes, anyway, so big shout out Narinjit to your children, and of course to yourself. Thank you very much indeed for your lovely comment. And next set, and once again I have to drag this across again. Here we go. TC, this is a nice comment. This is an important comment, this. And this comes back to, we had that commenter who made a pretty ignorant comment, I have to say. And I try not to be too rude about our critics, but it was, I have to say, it was dripping in ignorance. And TC comes back with, basically, it's alongside the lines of the Hindutva playbook. You're absolutely right. But interesting, it had an interesting concept here. Why do we get people like this on the show? Well, I do. If you're an Hindutva apologist, I don't want to be confrontational. If you align with Hindutva forces, if you are a believer that we're funded by the Pakistan intelligence, if you align with that, come on the show. Let's have a discussion about it. We are respectful. We respect your views. We're happy to debate it, talk about it. If you've got evidence, come and talk to us on the show. I'd be delighted. And TC, you develop your comment about this. To say, look, let's just scale it up, even not just on here, let's scale it up to the UK government. For some reason, the UK government seems, whether deliberately or through incompetence, seems completely ignorant of the truth here. They always align with the Indian narrative. Why? That's the big question. It's like the UK government needs educating about the truth. Am I sure that MI5, MI6, our own intelligence agencies, do they know the truth of the narrative that India pressures upon the United Kingdom? It's a fake narrative. The fact that Khalistan is a terrorist, the Khalistan movement is a terrorist movement, of course that's fake. But does the British establishment understand that? Does it know it, or is it deliberately ignoring it? That is the big question. And yeah, and you rightly draw the link between, for example, the British forces, military forces, are struggling to recruit people at the moment. They've only got 200, maximum 200 Sikhs in British forces. Compare that to the US forces, which I don't know the numbers, but I know the proportions are much higher. I don't know what it's like in Canada or Australia and New Zealand, but ultimately, yeah, here in the UK, we've got a recruitment problem in the forces, and that could so easily be solved if we had a Sikh regiment. If we had a Sikh regiment, it would draw so many young Sikhs, I have no doubt, into that, because it would represent everything that they want to fight for, everything that they enjoy, having Sikh genes in them. You know, they were basically built by God to be warriors. That is their sole purpose in life. And these days they have to express it through fighting, political campaign, democratic, peaceful campaigning, or through sport. It doesn't matter. But they are driven. They're all so deeply motivated. And what better career than in the British Army, where they can actually then go out and be soldiers, be the best. And that indeed they would be. A Sikh regiment would be the best. So we have this recruitment crisis. So why on earth is the British government doing everything it can to upset its Sikh community, to drive away the Sikh community, the very people who would be the first to stand up, as they did in 2 world wars, to fight for this nation? So what on earth are you playing at, really? And that's the message from TC. I think it's absolutely right. I think it's a good link to draw. You wonder why you can't draw Sikhs to the British Army is because of everything that you're doing. When people like the MP for Jagtar Singh Johal asked the government a question, why aren't you doing something about Jagtar Singh Johal? constantly just gets ignored, gets batted back. That's the message that you're sending to the Sikh community, that you don't care. In fact, not just you don't care, quite the opposite. And sorry, not the opposite. It's worse than that. You actually actively are doing everything you can to suppress and persecute our very own Sikh minority here in the UK. And then you wonder in the next breath why you can't recruit soldiers. It's very simple. You've got some of the best potential soldiers you could ever recruit sitting there, here in our community. And all you're doing is pissing them off. It's not rocket science. Excuse my language. Sorry, yes, if there are youngsters watching, that's bad language. Don't follow my example. Final set of comments. And again, it's all going pear-shaped. There we go. Regenda call. Hello, Regenda. You're calling from Germany. I'm trying to think what hello is in. Hello in German. I'm trying to think what good morning is. Oh, guten Morgen. Regenda. There you go. I'm practicing my schoolboy German. Thank you for your support and thank you for your comment. Thank you for watching. Do spread the word. Sukhdeep Virk. All Sikhs support Khalistan referendum. This is an interesting comment because I always said, no, they don't. Not necessarily. But actually, I'm wrong. I misread that. I thought all Sikhs support Khalistan. And I thought, no, all Sikhs don't support Khalistan. Most do, not all. And that is an important distinction because you have an absolute right, ironically, a democratic prerogative not to support Khalistan. If you don't think it's right, I absolutely, totally and utterly stand up for your right to say that. But anyway, it didn't say that. It actually said all Sikhs support the Khalistan referendum. Yes, of course, because a referendum is a democratic tool, an instrument. It is essential in any democracy. So, of course, all Sikhs, I believe, will support a referendum on it. All Sikhs do support the whole concept of a basic democracy. So thank you, Sukhdeep. You're absolutely right there. Punjab is homeland of Sikhs. Thank you very much, James. Oh, God, this one here. I came up with this comment. James Scott, for your work in spreading the truth narrative of great Sikh community. Well, I just wanted to highlight the fact there's a wonderful confusion there. I'm Angus. I'm Angus Scott. James is poor James Cousino, who departed recently. So, but you can call me James Scott. As I said, I don't mind. You can call me whatever you want. But thank you anyway for that. SSI Singh. Hello, Angus G. Hoping you're in good spirits. Doing a great job. Many thanks. I'm in wonderful spirits. Thank you very much indeed. In fact, I'm in Chardi colour, as Sal Nina says. I love that phrase. Chardi colour. It's one of my favourite Punjabi phrases. That I am in Chardi colour. Absolutely. And as Tarlok Sahuta says, and my Palwinder Singh says, keep it up. Keep it up. Absolutely. I can only keep this up if you guys keep supporting, keep commenting, keep emailing me. As if by magic. There you go. Message at satlogetv.com. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about, etc. Give me your feedback. Give me your perspectives. As I say, I can only keep it up if you guys are there with me, along for the ride. So thank you for your support. Cam KZ says, many thanks for highlighting the Sikh freedom struggle. Khalistan Zindabad. Mangal Singh, likewise. Khalistan Zindabad. And Omar Singh, even better. Khalistan is on the way. It is indeed. And I always like to remind our audience on a daily basis, it's on the way. As we said yesterday, the Khalistan train is leaving the station. Hop on board or be left behind. So there you go. So that's it. Another day. Do keep those comments coming. Thank you so much for all your support. As I said, I've been a little overwhelmed with the lovely warm comments. It's been some really nice comments. And even though I haven't put most of them up here, those comments of support and just general love have been really, really so well received and so appreciated. And as I said yesterday, I'd send it straight back to you, hurl it straight back to you with equivalent love and appreciation for everything that you guys out there have been doing. So keep up the good work on your side. Do keep spreading the word. Do keep your comments coming in. Do keep watching. And as I say, particularly if you're in the Punjab, get more people in the Punjab watching. We need more people in the Punjab to know the truth because momentum is building. We've got to keep that momentum up. We've got to keep people across India aware of the truth of what's going on because it's happening. It really is happening. The Khalistan train is leaving the station. So, as I say, hop on board. Right, on that note, we're going to bring the show to a close. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow. Podcast coming out on Friday. Interesting one about Indian economics. And we will, of course, be discussing Mark Tully and some interesting stories about Mark Tully that many of you might not be aware of, which is quite interesting. So do watch out my podcast on Friday with Dr. Graywell, where we'll discuss, amongst many things, Mark Tully. But that's it for another day. Thanks so much for watching Perspectives. I will see you, God willing, next time.